Hi, I'm Jenna Eyre. I'm an associate with CBRE and I focus on occupiers in the market and tenant representation. CBRE is pleased to partner with Silicon Slopes in hosting these town hall events. CBRE understands our technology clients because CBRE is a technology-driven company. CBRE invests in technology to help you invest in your growth. To learn more about how CBRE can help service your real estate needs, visit cbre.com.
All right, welcome to Silicon Slopes Town Hall. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Today we are joined by Dr. Susan Madsen, who is the inaugural Karen Huntsman Endowed Professor of Leadership in the John N. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State, and is also the founder and director of the Utah Women Leadership Project. How are you?
Great, thanks for having me today.
You bet, thank you. That's an awesome title.
You got through it.
Got through it. All right, so there's a lot in the actual title of what you do, plus the Women Leadership Project. But let's start with your new role at Utah State. You've been doing this for a while. What led to you accepting that position, and how's it going so far?
I love it. I actually was at Utah Valley University for about 18 years and have been I started 12 years ago, the Utah Women in Leadership Project there. And UVU's been a great place to be, and I've enjoyed that. I've been talking in the last couple of years with Utah State University, and Utah State University is what's called a land-grant university, which means their mission is absolutely all over the state. And so they have extension and statewide campuses and so forth. And the work I've been leading for about 12 years here in the state of Utah really is focused on trying to reach women and men to be allies all over the state, whether it's up in Logan or whether it's in Kanab or Delta or Vernal, all over the state. And so Utah State they made a good business case, let's put it that way, on why I should come with them, have this professorship, which is wonderful, and also really connect. 40% of my position is formally with Extension to try and figure out how do we move this around the state. All communities, all businesses, no matter where they're at, really needs women and men working together to get the best results. So I love it, and we're going to keep moving forward as I get more support, and I love that USU is very much out there to say we want to help and we want this connected to Utah State University.
Yeah, Utah State's done a great job. They're all over the state. Yep. And I'm kind of jealous because I assume at some point, when you have in-person stuff again, you'll be able to go to these campuses, and it's always fun to go down there and interact with new people and absorb their culture, and
it is, and
benefit.
And there's women all over who I'm connected with already, who just really love the message of what we do, and especially with the Utah Women in Leadership Project, our mission is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. So it's a very broad mission, and we do that through research and resources and holding events and convening things, and just a variety of things. So I think more and more women, especially after the pandemic, will be excited to have us in their communities and although I do think we'll stay with some Zoom events, because that really is easier for women no matter where they're at in the state of Utah to connect. And by the way, in our last event just last week, it looked like on the chat and in different things that we had people from Scotland and England and different states as well.
Yeah, that'll be a silver lining, is that these events are open to a lot more people, and it's very cool. All right, so you've kind of defined what the role is, but what are your day-to-day activities, and what do you do to kind of move the needle across?
Great question. Day-to-day, I actually right now am teaching an executive MBA course, and I designed it. The topic is innovative and inclusive leadership. So it's not your normal just leadership class, but it's very much looking at unconscious bias, but also looking at innovation in companies and the whole inclusion, equity, diversity, and belonging. So I do teach. I am right now, because I'm not traveling, generally speaking, I have written books, and I do a lot of travel around the world. Last year alone, well, actually 2019, I did keynotes in Lithuania, in the United Arab Emirates, in the Middle East, in Germany, and different places like that. So that work is a bit on hold. And that piece is really connected. I'm going to get back into that global work and global, having that global presence, really connected, I think, to my professorship. And then I have... right now, I'm doing so much with the Utah Women in Leadership Project. I actually, and when you say day to day, my days actually very much change, and my weeks and months are different. I do a lot of speaking. Generally speaking, right now during the pandemic, between 5 and 12 things a week. Keynotes or workshops or different things. So prepping on the weekends is a big part. So I do that. But I also, people reach out, I have meetings. I do a lot with collaborations. For instance, Silicon Slopes, you and I spoke a few weeks ago about our partnership, and what does that look like, and how can Silicon Slopes help me with my work? How can we help companies out there that are really connected to Silicon Slopes really learn more about inclusiveness and diversity, and how to really unleash the potential of their female employees. So it's all over the place, Garrett. I mean, in what I do every day. But one thing I will say is that I get up very early in the morning and try and move through lots of work. I do want to say, too, that we actually, right now, I have 21 research teams. So many people, some paid, but a lot of just professors from other campuses or volunteers in the community who want to be involved in research. And so we are prepping so many reports for future research on a variety of topics related specifically to business or related to community things that have implications to workplace settings. For instance, we have one right now we're putting together on suicide, human trafficking, an update on poverty in the state of Utah. Sometimes people say, well, what does that have to do with leadership and women in the workplace? There's a lot that has to, when a woman has been sexually assaulted, which 1 in 6 women in the state of Utah have been or will be raped, she's not as likely to use her voice and really be confident and move forward with some of the leadership and influence things, if she experiences those. So everything is related. Unpaid care work's another one that you do see a lot of conversation about in the news, and especially during pandemic COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're obviously passionate and enjoy it.
Yes.
And every time that I've spoken with you, you've always been energetic. So that's great. At least you enjoy it, so it's fun. So you've got all these platforms, and you're obviously very busy. Your scheduler must be very good with all of the travel and calls.
I actually schedule my own. Nobody does that for me. But I try to get as many requests in, and I do most of my speaking for free, okay. And just to help. I do need to mention that I feel very called to do the work that I do. No one really. The Commissioner of Higher Education 12 years ago asked me to do some research on why more women weren't graduating from college, and that's how I dived into doing this. But through the years, I wasn't necessarily asked to do all this research, but I feel like that's my role. That's one of my callings can be whether religious or secular. People can feel they're meant to do things, but for me, it's a religious thing and spiritual, and I feel called to really strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. And part of that is in business settings, but political as well, and higher ed and K through 12 leadership and community. Trying to get more women to run for city council. Right. All of those roles are important.
Yeah. Well, with all of the research, the polling, the writing, the scheduling, You've obviously got your own goals and agenda, and Utah State probably has some things that they'd like as far as metrics. What's your end goal with this job, and how will you know it was successful when you look back?
Great question. I have to go back to the mission that I've had, that I created, and that is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. Now, that is my ultimate goal, that we have more girls and women, young women too, teenagers, that are engaged, and especially women, more women in political settings, on our state legislature. And we have a woman now as lieutenant governor, but on city councils, on those things. And it's not just for the sake, Garrett, of having more women. The research is clear that when you have, so many studies on corporations, so when you have more women on boards of directors, in top leadership teams, that actually the company, there's financial benefits for that. There's also vast research, and this overlaps with the research on race as well, race and ethnicity, that when you have more diversity, you actually you have more innovation, more creativity, make better decisions, better problem solving. Especially, one of the interesting things is I do a lot of work, or have, in the UK, and they've been using the term wicked problems for a long time, and I love that. And those are complex problems. So with complex problems, when you have more diversity, it really matters. So that, and I'm talking even in church groups and congregations, so every place, what we know is this: when you lift girls and women, you also can lift families, and you can lift boys and men as well. A lot of times people say, well, are you doing it at the expense of men? And I'm like, no, there's no reason. I love my husband. I have 3 sons. But that's really important. I think the way that we measure it is great, because we have all kinds of metrics. We measure impact on social media and all the things you probably do too. However, we also do really good, rigorous reports. And so in fact, in the near future, we're going to release a brief on politics. So we did one in 2014, another one in 2017, and we'll do one now. So we can actually look through the years and see what's happening. Just so you know, we still have work to do in terms of women in companies, for-profit companies. Our first one in 2014 puts us very low in terms of women on corporate boards and in top leadership teams in the state of Utah. And in 2017, 3 years after, we actually got worse. And that, we really think, is that oftentimes, we love having tech companies come to Utah, but oftentimes it's very masculine, and then you have less women in those roles. So the great thing is, I think there's a lot of companies thinking about that now and trying to make those changes so that they can get the benefits that the research that's very clear. So reports are how we're measuring things to see if the needle is actually moving. And as you know, those reports can create urgency. Like, look, here's where we're at compared to the nation. Let's do better. Let's do better at attracting new companies to come to Utah.
So reports are good, and the tracking and monitoring is great. So there's probably been in your career a lot of topics, and those topics kind of form the reports and the surveys. Some are what we were talking about over the phone a couple of weeks ago, flavors of the month or flavors of the year. But what are some of your favorite topics or points that are kind of long-lasting, and what are some of your kind of favorite ones that you find most insightful and fun to research?
So I think long-lasting, I've gotten into years ago really researching and digging down into understanding confidence and the difference between men and women in confidence. And I'll tell you, I thought it wasn't going to last very long, but I spoke and did that research, and I still talk about it almost every week. And so when I talk a lot about these issues, I actually talk about how to lift women, or how to really help women be more in those conversations, we talk about two things, and these are long-lasting. One of them is that because of socialization, because of the way that girls and boys and teenagers are raised differently, we have to really work with women on confidence and their voice and give them opportunities and provide women-only training and those kinds of things. So that's a long-term thing. However, sometimes people think, well, if we do this, that will get more women stepping forward, leaning in. What the research is clear about and what I'm really committed to, yes, we need to do that. We absolutely need to do that. But if we're not also working on systems and processes and practices, things like unconscious bias training for everyone, bystander training, what all of those things look like, the processes, like, for instance, when we know from research that for resumes, if you get a resume that's exactly the same and it has a woman's name versus a man's name, 2/3 of, if it has a man's name, that resume will go up the line. Same thing for people of color, if you see those. So many companies now, you just take the names off at the first time through. So those kinds of systems and practices are more long-term. So those are my goals, to help communities, to help businesses, to give them resources and help us make those changes, but also to really give women opportunities to learn and grow themselves. And by the way, we have an upcoming event, very specific, two men who I know who were not from Utah, but the top in the world now on working with men to become male allies to women, and what that looks like. So that's one of our events coming up as well. So those are really some of the biggest, or long-term, I think you said, longer term. But some of the shorter term, right now we just finished collecting data for the month of January on COVID, the impact of COVID-19 on Utah women and work. And Garrett, we have over 3,600 responses. We worked really hard. A lot of people, you put it out, other folks did. And then just this morning alone, I prepped the qualitative. So we have numbers, we can run statistics, but we had 4 open-ended questions to really hear the experiences of women at work during the pandemic, but their career advancement opportunities, and actually we had a question on benefits, like, do you see any benefits that you've gotten? And I was thinking maybe we'd get 1,000 with that many, but 2,744 people gave us stories and comments. So this is going to take a long time to analyze data, but so that will pass. But I have to say it'll pass in some ways, but the research is telling us that women, it may take longer than we think. I mean, the pandemic can be over, but there could be longer term impacts on women and their promotions because of the year or so back. Hopefully not, it's not so, maybe just a year. So that one is shorter term, but could have longer term implications. And then we just I speak a lot on different topics and that I enjoy that are more short term. Just did a conference talk last week for Davis County Health Department on resilience. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Well, it's with your role in your career, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of things, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about that, and you think you might be good for a while, and then you circle back a year later and like, oh, I got to talk about that again, or this survey showed this. It'll be different in 10 years. Oh, it wasn't. So you've constantly got to keep pushing.
That's a good point, because sometimes you do think maybe we've made progress in these areas. What we do know, though, if we don't keep urgency up, then the status quo kind of just takes over and you just go down in terms of your work. It takes some work because we're all used to having men leaders. We're not used to, most of us, seeing women as leaders. So the research is quite clear even today. one research study from last week said if in the United States and in the UK, if you ask kids or teenagers, college students or adults to draw a picture of a leader, 70 to 75% even now will draw, what do you think? A man, and if you can tell color, a white man, and if you can tell height, what do you think?
6'2".
Tall.
Taller.
Yeah. No, over 6 foot.
Yeah.
So that's what's in our mind, not just for men, but for women too. So there's walls to break down, socialization to so the good thing is, well, this is not a great thing, but I'll always have a job.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're not going to resolve this anytime soon.
Yeah.
We're really working on some more timely topics in the state of Utah, addressing the wage gap issues. That's probably the top one right now because that's a hot topic, but it's hot for a reason.
Yeah.
There really are some discrepancies, but just to tell anyone that's watching, it's way more complex than people think it is. So.
Yeah. All of this is way more complex
Yes.
than people think. It's interwoven with 1,000 other things.
Yes.
So some of the walls are like reinforced concrete, and you'll have to batter those for a long, long time. And then some will, they're just like little fences, and those will come down easier. But I imagine you and your team kind of have to have thick skin every once in a while, and which leads to this question: what's the hardest part of the job, and ultimately, what's the most rewarding?
I love your metaphor about the walls. I was going to say something about that very quickly, though, because sometimes, there are things where you kind of want to beat the walls down. Forgetting the women, the right to vote, that's one of them, right? But a lot of times, personally, if I get that, I'll think, maybe I'll get a ladder and go over it, or maybe I'll go around it, or maybe I'll do something else. So give me your question again, though. I just made a comment, and you had a two-part question.
Yeah. So with all of that, with the walls and everything, you got to have thick skin. But
yes.
What's the hardest part of the job, and what's the most rewarding?
I think the hardest part for me is the relentless amount of work to do, and I'm a little short-staffed right now, so I start about 3 in the morning and often have 14 to 16-hour days, and then prep my speeches over the weekend. So personally, that's one of the hardest things. The great thing about that, though, is that there's so many emails and requests coming in that it's rewarding because our work is making a difference and the conversation's moving forward. So even though it's really hard in some ways, we have so many people that want the information, want to be involved in some ways. We had over 1,000 people a week ago attend one of our Zoom events. So there's some energy that's great. So even though it's a little challenging with trying to keep up with the demand right now, I appreciate it because that means that things are happening. So I love that. And the rewarding, for me, the most rewarding probably are when I get an email, and I get many of these, so I feel very, very, I benefit from even individual emails. It's a luxury, I know, compared to some, but when a woman emails and just said, this event that you just had, or your email that you just responded to, that I took time to respond to, has helped me in my life. It's opened up, new ideas. Probably a couple of years ago, can I just tell you about just one that has stayed with me? So I had a woman email, and she said it was in April or early May. This was a couple of years ago, and she said, I just want to tell you, Dr. Madsen, that 3 years ago, I heard you speak at Dixie. And you talked about how important it is to go back to school and if you haven't finished your college and get a degree. And she said to me, I just want you to know that I just walked and graduated with my bachelor's degree. And she had gone through a divorce. She had 4 children, and she had very little education. And so she went back, got her a degree, and then she told me, she's like, my kids were doing well. But she said, just want you to know I'm starting a master's at SUU in the fall. And thank you for the words that you spoke when I heard you that day that inspired me. So I feel grateful and honored, I think, to be in the position I am and feel that deep calling that I do. Sometimes I feel like, am I doing any good? And then other times I'll get just this email or a story that I know that the work is important, and we really, all of us, not just me, and I work with so many other groups and organizations that are helping with this as well. But that's rewarding to see actually life's changed for the good.
Yeah, that is rewarding and as good as it gets, right?
Yeah.
Those positive endorphins and
Yeah,
happy
that's true.
feelings.
True.
So are you and your team able to strategize and kind of forecast goals and ambitions? It seems like it might be just reactionary with the amount of deal flow and emails and phone calls that you get. But do you guys look ahead, or are you fine just kind of reacting to the current market?
That's a great question as well. We kind of are reacting. I have a general plan that I look ahead, but we shift as we need to. A year ago, even January, February a year ago, we had no idea that COVID, you remember at the first, we're like, by May, things will be over. But we react to that. But my overall goals, really revolve around research. So I always have a list of the research that's coming forward, but then a dream list. And that often comes from people's requests.
Gotcha.
And then when people come in and say, hey, I'd love to help as a researcher or this or that, oftentimes one will move to the top because I have people that want to do research on it, and then they do it. So we're more fluid. I do have a list of different goals, but I would say they're probably more like, I have a bigger vision, but maybe the next year I have. But again, we'll shift as needed. And I think that's the best thing we can do right now, to be able to be more adaptable to what's happening around us and the needs of the state and the needs for businesses. Yeah. What I love, like I said before, is I am contacted a lot by various businesses in the state, and they're more interested. The Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement a few years ago, they're more interested, and I think they're realizing this is not going away. And so that brings some energy, and we want to be helpful with resources to businesses out there.
Very cool. All right, so who are, let's not give you multiple choice here. Who's kind of your favorite leader in business or whatever that you look to and aspire to be similar to and have got a lot of good knowledge and understanding?
Oh, that's a good question, too. I don't know if I have a perfect answer to that. I actually love to observe and watch a lot of different leaders, and I use quotes from people even like Eleanor Roosevelt, who is a historical leader. So what I think I do is look to certain kind of styles of leadership and what they do, and then kind of pull those together in a meaningful way. I use a lot of quotes. So I love some of the quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt, like I said. I even use one from Margaret Mead and one from Margaret Thatcher, although I don't really want to emulate her style. And I've really appreciated people like some of the women that have stepped forward in our state legislature. Lieutenant Governor Henderson is a friend of mine, and I've really appreciated watching the way that she does, speaks and interacts and takes that case that she's trying to make and moves that forward. So I don't think I have a one that I'm going to mention, but I think to me, a lot of people have really impacted me, including men, I should say, as well. I love our new governor's energy and just being able and being raw sometimes. I love that. So I think that authenticity that he brings often is something that I appreciate as well.
Yeah, It's a good group. So you have been in leadership positions for quite some time and in the public eye for quite some time, and you've got 1,000 spinning plates and a lot of demands. That's a tough position to be in. How do you handle that, right? The small requests, the big requests, the detractors. You've got to manage that. You're still a person. What are some of the tricks that you do to manage?
I actually received an email this morning to help me manage my time better. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's rough sometimes, because I've looked into neuroscience and how all of our brains are so different. And by the way, I really, there's a lot of depth. Most people don't get there to the Strengths Finder, the Gallup Strength Finder, in understanding how your brain works, not just the surface level kinds of things. But one of the things that I've realized is that you can't give like, this is how you balance this is how you do time management. You have to understand how your brain works and what brings you energy and what brings you life and what means a lot to you, right? Like family and so forth. So one of the tricks I use actually is to get up very early in the morning, have some space to think, get caught up, and I spend time every day early in the morning and other times just thinking about my values, but thinking about priorities and shifting as I need to and being able to shift things aside. I'm a big checklist person, but I like to accomplish things. I'm a task-oriented, but I guess the bottom line to what I'm saying is deeper self-understanding gives you more tools to make choices that are conscious in how you spend your time and what you do. For me, if I believe it's going to impact people, their confidence, and especially if organizations contact me and I think, okay, they can take our message out, that's where I want to spend my time. But on the other hand, I do have to say that I have a tough time turning down individual requests for, I'm looking for direction in my life. A lot of people are looking for more meaning and direction, and we need to help them as well. So I feel very honored to have people reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the world needs folks like you that will pick up the mantle and do hard things, and have a diverse skill set with both the qualitative and the quantitative, and then aren't afraid to get on stage and be in front of the camera. And there's not a lot of you, so I know the community appreciates the work that you've done, and look forward to continuing to be a partner with you and your team, and appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks so much. Good chatting with you today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jenna Eyre. I'm an associate with CBRE, and I focus on occupiers in the market and tenant representation. CBRE is pleased to partner with Silicon Slopes in hosting these town hall events. As the largest commercial real estate services firm on the globe, we pride ourselves in having the most robust and flexible technology services platform in the industry. We tailor custom results to every client we serve. That includes our many technology clients. CBRE offers a full suite of services designed to add value and drive business to your bottom line. This includes the ability to help you determine how much space you might need. It also includes tools that allow you to analyze workforce demographics to determine which area and location might best suit your company's future growth. If it's design services you need, CBRE has tools that allow you to custom design your own floor plan and test fit to drive you to occupancy faster and money to your bottom line. CBRE understands our technology clients because CBRE is a technology-driven company. CBRE invests in technology to help you invest in your growth. To learn more about how CBRE can help service your real estate needs, visit cbre.com.